The cycle goes like this. You lock in and you fall off. You lock in, you make the perfect plan, your diet, your budget, you plan out the exact steps day by day to reach your dreams. And you go in the mirror, you tell yourself, like, from this day onwards, my life's gonna change. This is the turning point. And at that moment, it's not just like a random motivation, it feels real, like this is where everything's gonna change for you. But a day, a couple of days, weeks, maybe 2 weeks go by and life happens. Life throws a random curveball at you that destroys this system that you built for the past 2 weeks. And then slowly you feel like you're going back to who you were before. You try to find these short dopamine cycles, like these short pleasures, and you try to stick within your comfort zone and do the things that give you instant gratification rather than actually doing the hard things that take you towards your dreams. And then you slowly start to crawl back to those excuses you made up to numb the gap between you and the person you actually want to become. And the worst thing about it is that you've been here and you know this place because you made it up. You built this place. I started my self-development journey about 3 years ago, and within those 3 years I've been through this cycle countless number of times. The lock-in, the fall-off, the get back, the reset, the fall-off. And every time like I reset and go back into my plans or my goals, I always felt like, okay, this time I think I'm gonna escape this cycle. This is the time that I'm actually getting it right. But it never happened. And for the past few weeks, I've been in the phase of falling off from the first initial like lock-in for this year. And I went completely honest with myself and asked myself, what's happening? Like, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? There's gotta be something. And I think that was the first step, because I felt like all this time I wasn't being honest with myself at all about what's causing this fall from the lock-in and how can I actually overcome it, and what am I doing wrong that's stopping me from overcoming it all this time. See, from my perspective, the problem I see is that every time that we fall off from this cycle, like the plans that we have to reach our goals, we look back at our failures in disgust and try to get back into a version of ourselves that's a step further. We try to sort of out-discipline our past selves because we think our past selves wasn't disciplined enough to stick to this cycle that we made up, stick to this system that we built. And it took me 3 years of doing that to actually realize that that's not gonna work. And that's when I actually came back to that question and went completely honest with myself on what's happening. And I started to audit the congruency between the life I actually live on a daily basis and the life I wanted to live on a daily basis. So I think this video is gonna be on how I got to that and what my conclusions were from that conversation with myself. So during this conversation I had with myself, one of the main topics that stood out or that I understood the most is this cycle of getting on and falling back it's not a discipline problem. And I think, from as far as I can understand, I feel like it's an attachment problem. See, every time you lock in and get into this cycle or like schedule of doing the things that would get to your goal, you're not just building a system, you're attaching yourself to a person or a version of you that you want to become, that you see in the future, that you think, okay, if I keep doing this for X amount of time, I will become this person. And you start to look at yourself from the point of view of that person, and you look back and think, you measure a bit like the difference between you and the future version of yourself that you made up in your head. So there's an attachment of you to that feeling of the version of yourself that has already achieved all your dreams and goals by following the system that you planned like a couple of days ago. Now you're carrying around this attachment that you made with a future version of yourself that you made in your head throughout your daily like tasks, day by day. You're carrying it around like a weight. And then when like actual real life kicks in, maybe like a hard week at work of pure exhaustion that you did not expect at all, and everything breaks, and it's not actually just the system or the routine that breaks, it's the image that you made up in your head that breaks. And when that image of yourself that you made up in your head breaks, the shame starts to come in. You feel ashamed of the fact that this is what my life has come to. This is what I've become. And if you know anything about shame, shame doesn't make you work harder. Shame makes you crawl back to the things that makes you not feel shameful for at least the smallest amount of time. And when I came to this thought is when I realized that we don't break this cycle because we are weak. We break this cycle because we're trying to escape a version of ourselves that we made in our heads. So what I think we should do to disassociate ourselves from this cycle is to let go of that image. Not the dream, not the goal, not the standard, just the attachment to it. And I want to be very clear about this because I don't necessarily think that detaching from this image is you giving up, or like you lowering the bar, or you letting go of the dream. I think all it means is that you just stop caring about it from a distance, and you stop living inside this reference point of thought of a version of yourself in the future, and keep looking back at the present version of yourself and trying to audit the gap between the two versions. And you start to live in the present and look at your goal from a reference point of now, and start actively pursuing it rather than passively comparing. So on paper, the difference you have to make is pretty simple. You have to start focusing on now and start comparing your progress through your goals by what you do at the present, rather than comparing it to what you should do to reach this version of yourself. Because if we really think about it, it's not trying to match ourselves to this image of a version of ourselves from the future. It's actually being that person as much as you can on a daily basis. Now, I understand that you can't reach your goal or dream on a daily basis and the current life you live right now, and that's totally fair. I can't even imagine doing that because I have very long work days and I rarely have time to actually like work on my dreams. I thought I had the plans to make this video for like almost a week and a half, and I just had the time to make it. And I wanted to go on like runs and work on my physical physical well-being for the same amount of time, and I just had the time to just go on a run tonight. So what I'm saying is, it's not comparing to yourself from a version that goes on a run every day or makes videos every day, and looking back at yourself and thinking, why can't I do that? Because your life's not gonna allow you to do that at first. Like it's pretty obvious if you think about it. And if we look back at from that reference point like we used to, you are always gonna be ashamed of yourself for not being able to do that, when realistically your life really doesn't allow you to do that. So like, you have to be fair to yourself on what you can do and how you can proactively become the person that you want to become. Like you have to be what you want to be, sort of. Like in the simplest form, you have to be what you want to be on a daily basis for as far the extent as you can go. In the simplest of words, when you put it, the goal stops becoming something that you chase on a daily basis, and it becomes that something you are actively progressing towards. I feel like that is a very crucial point of understanding we should arrive at in our journey of self-development, that when you detach from this image you have in your head, you stop living and dying by the fact that if the system stayed perfect throughout the 7 days a week, you stop crossing the boxes, you like start actively progressing. So a bad day or a bad week is gonna be a bad day or a bad week, but you're actively progressing, so you're not giving up. And it's not like the bad day or bad week is gonna mess your system up, because that is built within your system. And the bad day or a bad week stops becoming a reason for you to numb out and think of yourself as a failure, because you understand that it is a part of your daily life that you're working in and you're progressing in. When a hard couple of days at work show up, you stop feeling guilty about it, you rest and you recover, and then you go at your goals again, actively progressing daily. And another thing is, when you're actively progressing to your goals, you stop becoming anxious of, let's say you had a bad week, you stop becoming anxious, or I had a bad week, I had to catch up, I have to do 2 times the work to catch up of what I missed through the last week. See, that's not how it should be. You might feel like this is what you should do. Like if you missed 1 week, you have to do twice the work next week. It wouldn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, because you have to understand the extent you can go within your lifestyle right now without comparing to someone who's doing it full time. Because I have a full-time job that I have to do, and this is, even though this is what I would like to do full-time someday, this is something that I have to do part-time right now. And there's a full-time job that I have to do in order for me to do this at least part-time now, because obviously I'm not making any money from this, and to make a living I have to do that full-time job. And if I can't do that, then I won't be able to do this even part-time. So you have to be honest with yourself about the extent you can go to actively progress towards your goals. And I genuinely feel like that this is the only sustainable way to go at your dreams or goals without burning out, or without having to be like a slave to that cycle of locking in and falling out, locking in and falling out. So you have to think of how to sustainably and actively progress towards your goals. See, I don't know what time you're watching this or why you decided to click on the video, but if the title brought you here, You know exactly where in this cycle you are right now. You don't have to tell anyone else, but you have to be completely, brutally honest with yourself about where you are and why did you end up here again. You have to stop living in a comparison between yourself and the image you have made in your mind, and you have to start actually living it. You have to separate yourself from just thought and actually start being. That's it.